we're going to have the CEO of Cybin in, and that's Doug Drysdale. So let's welcome in Mr. Drysdale back to the podcast. Good to see you. And how are things? It's interesting times, I think, for this space because, I think that let's face it, it was quiet for a period of time. Yes, there was companies like yourselves doing a lot of work trial related, but I do think that we've seen some optimism in the space over the last 10 to 12 days, don't you think?
Yeah. Hey guys, good to see you again. Yeah, I agree. It's there's with the new administration coming in, I think there's a lot of attention now on cannabis and psychedelics, and great to see that we're getting front and center attention for the work that we do. It's great.
Yeah, I think 100%. Well, look, before we get into the actually details from your announcement this morning, like RFK being appointed as the new of HHS, and let's face it, he put things like a lot of attention on the space 12 days ago when he said we need to do further research pertaining to psychedelics. Do you, based on conversations with your network, the conversations that you have, do you think this administration is serious and will make it a priority based on some of the people that you've had conversations with, Doug?
Look, I think both sides of the aisle are supportive of mental health treatments and they're supportive of psychedelics. So I see that this is not a negative. Look, we know that RFK is a controversial figure.
I hear you.
But on the other hand, he's super passionate about our nation's health, whether it's drugs or it's the food chain, and he's motivated to get some things done. So, but to have someone in the administration as HHS secretary that has said that he would like to see some regulation, some regulatory framework around psychedelics, that's I think that's a good thing. That's exactly what we're trying to do, is bring these treatments to patients in a regulated way.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why I wants to make this a priority is because there's stats and data that shows over 20 million Americans have been diagnosed with MDD, major depressive disorder, Your company, Cybin, as we know, may have a solution for that. You announced earlier today that your leading research compound, CYB003, reported 71% remission in patients with major depressive disorder. Based off of this news, what does this announcement mean for the company?
Well, not just 71% remission, but 71% remission. That means patients no longer having depression. 71% of them after just 2 doses, 12 months later.
12. That's key to understand that, right?
Yeah. So look, I mean, we ran a robust phase 2 study, a placebo-controlled study. We saw 75% remission rates at 4 months. And then we ran this observational follow-up, open label follow-up up to 12 months. And sure, you can look at the data and say it's a small sample, but we had 21 patients in the follow-up. But when you see 100% response rates, 71% remission rates, directionally that's super exciting. We announced last week that we've just initiated our phase 3 program, and this is at a point a few months after the whole MDMA AdCom scenario. So we've been through that whole discussion with FDA, and we've got FDA clearance on our phase 3 program.
That's great.
After all of that stuff. So we've cleared the regulatory doubts and hurdles. We've answered all the FDA's questions. They've given us the green light. And now today we announced this data that shows, I think, a big de-risking of phase 3 with that kind of outcome 12 months after just 2 doses.
With the numbers that you brought, I mean, a lot of the TAM that we talk about is psychedelics kind of taking over for SSRIs the way that they are in the market right now. Empirically, how does the data with 71% of participants in remission and in the further data, how does it stack up? How does it stack up empirically to SSRIs?
Right. So SSRIs you dose every day, not just twice a year like we're going to be able to do, I think, with CYB3. So you take them every day. Most of the data points are at 6 weeks. So every day for 6 weeks. Okay. About 1/3 of patients on SSRIs are in remission after 6 weeks of chronic dosing. I don't think that gets any better a year later. Right? And patients are taking these treatments every day and with the side effects. So it means that 2/3 of patients aren't in remission. They may have some relief of symptoms, but they are still having to take this drug every day. We see CYB3 as an interventional treatment that can come in and, for the majority of patients, help relieve their depression very quickly and for a long period of time.
And then for those that don't know, is 003, is it being administered with talk therapy? Is it psychedelic assisted therapy? How is the patient and, let's say, the therapist engaging in the process?
Yeah, so during treatment, we leave the patient alone, honestly.
Okay.
Psilocybin is a bit of a wavy experience. There are peaks and troughs of intensity. And some patients on the first dose can resist. They can, maybe they're skeptical, maybe they're a bit anxious. And so some can resist. So the last thing you want to do is kind of interrupt patients when they're in their flow. Psilocybin affects the language centers. So patients can't really get involved with psychotherapy. So we're doing the opposite of that, actually. We're leaving them alone, where they're wearing an eye mask, they're wearing a headset, listening to music, and they're focused internally. There's someone in the room observing them for safety, but there's no intentional, interaction.
Makes sense.
So from a therapeutic perspective, there's a lot of introspection going on.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, we don't let patients go into these sessions uneducated. We provide education and informed consent up front, and we help the patient debrief after. And we do that for both the active group and the placebo group. And so they're all getting that same kind of pre-care and aftercare. And the difference between the two groups, obviously, is the drug.
Okay. So as we enter into a phase 3, besides the obvious based on trial sizes, like what's the biggest difference as to what you're monitoring versus a phase 3 to phase 2? Because I think there's a lot of people that are still trying to understand the science of it all. We all know the way trials are structured and set up is key. Even though you may have a solution, it's how these are structured up. I think it's some of the reasons why Compass has run into a few issues recently. But how do you prevent something like that from happening, and walk us through how this is set up? And, hopefully gets the outcome that many Americans really want and have a drug that's definitely licensed and commercialized in the coming years for this.
Yeah, so I think two areas of concern have come up in the last few months. One is Lykos's concerns, which I think were very specific to their application.
Yeah.
There's a lot of focus then around functional unblinding. So we've spent a ton of time on our own design and with FDA designing the studies to mitigate against that. And so one of the studies has a 3-arm design designed to overcome that. And then you have the challenges that Compass appears to have had with recruiting. And we think that's very specific to their protocol and their population. So Compass is recruiting treatment-resistant depression patients.
Okay.
That means those patients have to have failed 2 treatments in the current depressive episode. And to meet that criteria, Compass has to go back and document that from their medical records. They're also dosing their treatment as a monotherapy, which means they're asking their patients to come off their background medications and before taking the test drug, the study drug. And that obviously, those two things, I think, just lead to higher hurdles when it comes to screening and recruiting patients. We are not having to document patients. We're recruiting patients from a much larger major depressive disorder, MDD population, so not having had to 2 failures. And we're also allowing patients to stay on their background medication. So that's less scary for them as they're coming into the study. So we're hoping that our protocol design will mitigate against some of the delays that they've been seeing.
Coming in with their current medications, whether it be SSRIs or something different, how does that change the trial design, let's say, when you go into phase 3? Because is the ultimate goal for them to go through the treatment with 003 and then come off those SSRIs at the end, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in clinical practice, that's the goal, right? Okay. So the way the studies are designed, there are 2 short-term studies going out to 12 weeks. And in each of those studies, patients have to remain on stable doses of their SSRIs or SNRIs. So they come in on their doses, stable doses of antidepressants, both in the placebo group and the active group. And we measure them in a placebo-controlled way through 12 weeks. After 12 weeks, we follow up patients for up to a year after dosing. And in that full year follow-up, it's more observational. So if patients need to add more medications, they're allowed to do it. We just record it. If they come off their medications, that'd be great. We record that as well.
Right.
And so we're collecting data over that time to see what happens over time.
Doug, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was going to say, with phase 3 paradigm underway now, I mean, what are some of the main endpoints that you're looking out for in terms of efficacy and safety to get out of the study?
Yeah, I mean, so far the safety profile has been fantastic. We've seen no serious adverse events and only side effects during the 2 dosing sessions. and no other new side effects in the whole year of follow-up. So that's very different to daily dosing. We'll be looking for similar outcomes as we did in the phase 2, which is reduction in depression scores 6 weeks after dosing compared to placebo, and response rates and remission rates. And if we can get anywhere close to what we're seeing out of the phase 2, this is going to be transformational for the space.
Yeah. 18 Wainwright, a price target $195. I know that's stuff that you don't pay attention to all that much, but aggressive, I would say. Like, we obviously want growth, but what's your current cash position right now, Doug? Because we all know phase 3 trials are not cheap, and like timeline for this phase 3 trial, what are we looking at?
Yeah, we expect to have a top line readout from phase 3 in 2026, hopefully the first half of 2026. We've got cash runway to get us through to that readout. And look, I mean, we have a market cap right now around $220-230 million. It's kind of a crazy market cap when you think about the scale of what we're trying to disrupt. 40 million patients in the US are on SSRIs for depression and anxiety. I think when you look at esketamine, I think esketamine is now treating somewhere in those like 40 to 50,000 patients, and they're trending over $1 billion in sales. And all of the large antidepressant drugs, antipsychotic drugs like Lexapro, Abilify, all reached around $4 billion in revenue. So if you think that's a rough ballpark for peak sales, then a $200 million valuation is kind of nuts. So I'm not surprised to see much higher price targets given where we are.
Yeah, we've had a few comments here. Big Pharma would want to block that. No, Big Pharma wants people taking drugs daily once a year. Well, when you think about some of the stuff that's taken place recently, and like I said, some of the big pharma companies were hit actually, last week based off the RFK news and some of the stuff that he wants to do. But don't you think now some of his initiatives start to actually come into play and we start to see change? But now, could there be interest regarding acquisitions in this space? If Big Pharma realizes that, look, if there is going to be a change, and this is the new sort of landscape for mental health and how we're treating it, this would not only interest them more, would it not, in comparison to blocking something?
Yeah, look, I mean, the older antidepressants are all generic now, so the branded pharma companies aren't making anything off of those. So they are looking for innovation. RFK's beef with pharma is often that drugs that come along, new drugs, are only just incrementally better than the one before. It's a little bit better, or a me too. And I can understand that frustration. I mean, that's kind of how science works, right? It's incremental. But what we've got here is the opportunity for a paradigm shift. That's the kind of thing that he's looking for, is drugs that can really move the needle. Yeah.
Well, look, we're in a stage now where I know it wasn't the news that we wanted to see back in the summer. We're getting Lykos. I think there was a dark cloud that was kind of hanging over in the space. But do you think now we're into November? Have we moved on from that, do you feel?
Yeah, I think we're getting there. I would say that fundamental biotech investors were not phased by the MDMA AdCom. It was very specific to that program. I'm certain they're getting clarity on the path forward, and that drug works. It does. MDMA works for PTSD. They just have to do the right regulatory work to get an approval. I think us showing longevity, durability data here is one of the final key pieces, because look, it's great that these treatments work and they work really well, but nobody wants to come back and have a psychedelic treatment every month, right? So you want to have durability. So now we can show that patients may only have to come back for treatment maybe twice a year. And you compare that to interventional treatments like TMS and esketamine, where patients might be coming back every 2 weeks. Those clinics quickly run out of space.
Makes sense.
So we can free up a lot of resources.
Well, like you said, paradigm shift. These are incredible results. Great work. We're rooting for you, because not only Anthony and I, but there's 40 million Americans right now that are also rooting for you too, because we do need a paradigm shift. But as always, we'll be watching this industry very closely, because it just woke up. I think it's been around, but like you said, a lot of biotech investors have been following this closely, but it's starting to take shape where more and more people outside of that are understanding what the true potential is. But tell the team we say hi. Let's keep in touch, and congrats on the news from this morning.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you again. Take care.
All right.
Thank you, Doug. Good seeing you.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. What'd you all think? Is there any information that we're missing? Is there anything you want us to cover? As these industries heat up, we're getting access to more and more big hosts. So let us know the questions that you want us to ask for you. As usual, smash that like button. We want this to go viral. Click on that bell for all notifications for the latest interviews that we're doing. And as usual, let's build this community. Subscribe to our channel because we appreciate it, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.